Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents The Comeback Culture, 10 Business Practices That Create Lifelong Customers by Jason Young and Jonathan Malm, narrated by Jim Denison. Forward. When Jason and Jonathan asked me to write the foreword for The Comeback Culture, I was excited to be a part of the project. I believe that getting the customer to come back is one of the most important parts of any business, and I know it takes a relentless commitment to excellence to make that happen. Years ago, as I began to build the processes that would create the culture of the Ritz-Carlton Hotel Company, I wanted to create the most excellent hotel company in the world. I invited people to join me in that vision. I knew I would need leaders who wanted to create something beautiful. This approach allowed our team and brand to win the hearts of guests around the world. I was fortunate enough, even as a young boy in Europe, to work under world-class leaders in the hotel industry for many years before earning leadership roles where I brought to life many of the high standards I was taught. Yes, I work in the hotel business, but it doesn't matter what business you work in. The customer's expectations are the same, no matter the product. They expect the product or service to be without defects, delivered in a timely manner, and delivered by someone who is nice. Customer loyalty is nothing more than customers trusting you. We build trust by providing consistency with flawless products, timely service, and kind, caring customer interactions. If you are listening to this book, you probably already know why customer loyalty, trust, is important to your company. But in our situation at the Ritz-Carlton Hotel Company, I estimated that our average customer was worth about $200,000 to our company over their lifetime. That's why I empowered our team to spend up to $2,000 at a time to make things right for the customer. I knew that customer loyalty would be so lucrative to our business that it was worth the risk of spending up to $2,000 in a moment to recover a guest or to create a memory they wouldn't forget. Since this was a controversial management decision, I should also mention that it was extremely rare for anyone to spend $2,000. The real benefit was the empowerment our teams felt to own and solve just about any problem distracting our guests from having an incredible experience. And as you'll hear in this book, empathy and kindness are often the only things needed to fix a problem for a guest. Caring for guests and delivering excellence are hard work. They are supposed to be. But there's a big reward. Studies show that 70% of the market is willing to pay more for the same product if the service is excellent. That means if you have a competitor that has a product identical to yours, you can get more business than them just by providing better service. You can even charge more for that product and still capture more of the market. My hope for you as you listen to this book is that you evaluate your business. Does it provide excellent care for the guest, the customer? Even if your business does this well, I would love to challenge your thinking and behavior to get even better. Your competitive advantage may simply be the excellence and care you intentionally and consistently deliver to each guest. I am glad you picked this book. Jason and Jonathan have great experience to guide you. You will love the ideas and nuggets in each chapter. They value all the factors that create care for a guest, and they have repeatedly proven their work. When you get to the end of the book, you will see what Jason, Jonathan, and I believe. We are convinced that creating a culture of care for both team members and guests allows everyone to win, and the elements you build into your culture can tell your guests you want them to come back again and again. Horst Schulze, co-founder, former president, and COO, Ritz-Carlton Hotel Company. Expert in residence, Arch and Tower. Author, Excellence Wins. Introduction. We are drawn to areas where our brains perceive safety. There is a segment of our brain whose whole job is to evaluate whether or not we will survive in a certain environment. Our brains are constantly scanning for danger, and if we ever perceive danger, even in small amounts, an amygdala hijack takes place. A part of our brain takes over and tells us to respond to the danger. We either fight, fly, or freeze. When people encounter your business, do they respond one of those ways? The comeback culture and the hospitality we'll be talking about in it is essentially this one thing: making people feel safe and comfortable in your environment. Does your business make people feel welcome? Do the options presented to the customer feel safe? Or are there threats that cause people to distrust your organization? The threats don't have to be as dramatic as someone standing at the front of your business with a gun strapped to their shoulder. They can be little things that remove an element of comfort, causing the amygdala hijack to happen. Our culture is largely operating in a trust deficit. People are skeptical of politicians, of wealth, of racial issues, of marketing, of businesses. Remember when you saw someone wearing a three-piece suit as an authority who was there to help? Remember when you thought you could leave your front door unlocked? Remember when you weren't nervous about trick-or-treating with your kids? Maybe you don't remember those days, because we've been operating from a trust deficit for so long. We now are skeptical of the business suit, worry about the safety of our kids, and are even worried that our neighbors might be threats. So, when a company can create a sense of trust and safety for you, you're much more likely to return. You're likely to keep coming back because the limbic system, the emotional response that kicks in before you can rationalize something, tells you that you're safe there. As we dive into the comeback culture, we'll talk about this idea of feelings. We'll talk about how to create an organization that makes people feel safe and welcome. And we'll talk about building a team that inspires trust in your customers. We'll use the term guest in lieu of customer quite a bit, partially because we want you to start thinking of your customer as someone you host. They're coming into your figurative home, and it's your responsibility to make them feel comfortable and safe, whether they're a first-time customer or have been frequenting your business for years. This idea of safety is important. Throughout this book, we'll share personal stories to help illustrate the following principles. 1. Focus on feeling as much as function. 2. Create a culture, not a job title. 3. Know the guest. 4. Be fully present. 5. Think scene by scene. 6. Recover quickly. 7. Observe details, because everything communicates. 8. Reject just okay. 9. Choose values over policies. 10. Build a hospitable team. To keep things clear, we'll make sure you know whose story is whose, but regardless of which stories belong to which person, we hope you'll start seeing your business environment in the narratives. Your organization can become the type that's magnetic, reaching new guests and creating that sticking point where they ultimately keep coming back for more. 1. Focus on feeling as much as function. Jason. There's only one thing I regret about my wedding. It was the wedding reception. I got married in my hometown of Atlanta, Georgia. My wife, Stacy, is from Oklahoma City. So obviously we hosted many more of my friends and family than hers at the wedding. And because of that, I was so focused on serving everybody at the reception that I left my wife standing there by herself. I was worried about greeting and hosting everything, and I neglected to enjoy time with her. I let my service overwhelm what the whole event was all about. To this day, that's the one thing Stacy says she wishes I'd done differently. Simply been with her at the reception. I was so focused on the task in front of me that I didn't focus on the most important person. In many businesses, the guest experiences what Stacy experienced. The service is excellent, not a single task is left incomplete, but the guest feels neglected. They feel served, but they don't feel hospitality. Businesses love to talk about serving. Customer service is all about taking care of the needs of the customer. The concept is action-oriented. When you hear serving a customer, it's all about doing a task. Have you ever experienced someone new to elite-level customer service? Imagine a new concierge at a fancy hotel trying to remember every task he's supposed to accomplish. The guest just got their questions answered and they're moving to exit the hotel, when suddenly the concierge remembers he's supposed to hold the door for guests. He rushes out from behind his station to get the door, but in the process he bumps the guest and actually cuts them off from their forward motion. He's contorting his body trying to hold the door for the guest, who is just standing there feeling awkward and uncomfortable. Sure, the concierge accomplished the task, but he made the customer feel confused and maybe even threatened. The new concierge technically served the customer, but through his service he gave the guest a negative emotion. It actually would have been better for him to ignore the task since he missed his window of opportunity. No matter how over-the-top your service, if it doesn't connect with the emotions of the guest, it isn't hospitality. Hospitality isn't just doing the right things. It's making the customer feel seen, valued, and cared for in the process. The idea of feelings isn't a popular one when it comes to business. Feelings are weird and even a little bit uncomfortable. Apart from the extremes of happy and angry, businesses don't often think through the nuances of what a guest might be feeling when interacting with them. This is especially true of things that feel almost entirely transactional. The truth is, though, that no matter how transactional you get, there will still be feelings involved. An ATM, for instance, is almost entirely transactional, yet people experience negative emotions when interacting with it. Is someone watching over my back to steal my pen? Will the machine take my card and not give it back? Will it charge me more than I anticipated? These are big emotions people experience, and that doesn't even take into account the colors of the machine, its cleanliness, the brightness of the screen. If people experience all those feelings when interacting with a machine, how much more do they feel when dealing with an actual person? Jason. There's a man who works at the Walmart by my house. He perfectly illustrates this idea of service without hospitality. The first time my wife and I encountered him, I had a simple question about the location of an item in the frozen foods section. He cheerily offered to escort me to the item. But once we found it, he didn't leave. He stood a bit too close to me and started talking to me about completely unrelated topics. His gestures felt like an octopus wiggling into my personal space. He didn't simply solve our problem and then ask, "Is there anything else?" He overstayed his welcome in an attempt to be over-the-top friendly. I told my wife as we walked away, that dude takes his job for real, and I don't mean that in a good way. Now when we visit that Walmart, we don't ask this guy for help, because he goes so above and beyond that it actually ruins the experience. Hospitality is about caring for the emotions of the guest just as much as it is about serving them, if not even more. That means knowing when it's time to go above and beyond the call of duty and when it's time to walk away. Hospitality is about merging the function, the tasks, and the feeling. Every time a guest has an experience with us, we should honor them enough to deliver the same level of hospitality. But that same level of hospitality might mean responding differently each time because the experience is about the guest. It's not about making ourselves feel good about the service we provide. It's about making the guest feel good about the hospitality we show. Many businesses have been doing this serving thing for so long that all they worry about is doing. We need to reimagine what it means to be the guest and what it means to serve them well. This means prioritizing the feelings of the guest over the tasks we perform for them. Jonathan. There's a bagel shop by my house that I'm only willing to patronize if I don't have to go inside. If the app isn't working or if I didn't plan ahead to order, I won't order bagels there. It's not because their bagels are bad. The shop actually makes the bagels my wife and I like the most. But when you go in, there are 6 people working on bagel orders. You stand at the front of the line, ready to order, and not a single person turns around to acknowledge you. They just feverishly work to fill their orders. After about 2 minutes of waiting, if you're lucky, someone will turn around and tell you that they'll be right with you. 2 to 5 minutes more go by, and they're still standing in their assembly line, immersed in their tasks. When you finally get to order, there's another line you have to stand in to pay, and the whole drama plays out again. I'm grateful for their tasks, but I just need a little bit of attention. It almost feels like the restaurant is there to serve the bagels, not the customer. How does this play out in other businesses? Think about a hotel receptionist. It can be so easy to get caught up in the task of checking in a guest that the receptionist forgets there's a whole story behind why that guest came to their hotel. Maybe it's for a much-needed vacation with their family, or maybe there was a death of a loved one that precipitated the trip, or maybe they just needed to get away from everything. Behind each one of those things is a whole host of feelings. It's easy for a receptionist to just check the ID, swipe the credit card for incidentals, and hand the guest their room key. The receptionist might talk to the coworker standing next to them because they had a long, exhausting day. Or they could just be focused on the slow computer system, or still be thinking about the previous guest who was mean to them. But hospitality looks different. It acknowledges feelings. As a person approaches the desk, they experience feelings. They might be exhausted, worried about whether the room will be ready, anxious about what they came to this town to do, stressed from the drive in. A hotel receptionist who understands this will make subtle changes to their approach. They'll still check in the guest, but they might make the following changes. Smile warmly and make eye contact with the guest as they arrive. Ask what brings them to town and express empathy for their reason. Gauge the speed of the guest. If they're anxious to get to their room, the receptionist will move efficiently. If they want to talk, the receptionist will listen. Address the whole traveling party, even kids. Make some local suggestions based on answers to earlier questions. Walk around the desk to give the guests their keys so it feels more personal and less transactional. Invite further questions, taking intentional time to listen and respond. To sum it all up, the receptionist will realize that the feeling they can give the guest is even more important than the tasks they're performing. They realize that people respond to feeling, and that feeling is memorable. Their job is not to give a guest a room key. It's to show hospitality through the act of connecting the guest to the hotel. To be honest, the guest could probably get their own room key. There are many hotel apps that make the check-in process unnecessary. But if the receptionist is able to ease the stress the guest is feeling, then they've performed a valuable function. They have delivered hospitality. Think of a time you visited a new business. You probably had an impression of the place, and you formed a decision to stay away or visit again. There are times when we can pinpoint why we like a business, but there are other times we aren't sure why we liked or disliked a place. It's just something we felt. There will be people who will return to your business and won't know why. They simply felt good there. And there will be others who won't be coming back. They can't explain to someone who asks why they decided not to return. It was just a feeling. Feelings are important, often even more important than the function. That's why we must merge the two. The question to ask when faced with this information is obvious. Do we simply let the tasks go in exchange for the feeling? No. This idea of merging function and feeling is about a perspective shift more than anything. It's not strictly a behavioral change, though this will affect our behavior. It's about focusing on the feeling of the task, not simply the task itself. Jonathan. There's a coffee shop I visit frequently. I'm a bit of a regular there. They always make my coffee right. I respect that they do their job well. But what made this particular coffee shop my favorite was one simple thing. At some point, each of the baristas moved beyond merely making my coffee to becoming my friend. They began asking my name and asking about my job. In the moment they ask details about me, it feels like they're stepping outside of their role and making a personal connection with me. It's that feeling they've injected into my visit. Don't get me wrong, if they continually messed up my drink order, it wouldn't matter how personal our connection. I probably wouldn't keep going back. The function has to be there. But the merging of the feeling and the function takes the coffee shop from good to excellent. When the emotion is there, it doesn't feel like someone is just doing their job. It's like they're your friend. It feels like they're rooting for you, and doing their job is a way to support you, not just a means to perform a task. Connecting with the existing feeling. Empathy, understanding and acknowledging what the guest is feeling, is one of the most important elements of hospitality. A typical guest experiences various feelings during a visit to a business, and many of them are not good. Understanding those feelings is vital to a successful guest experience. But understanding is not enough. Excellence in hospitality means replacing those negative feelings. A guest who is visiting a business may already be feeling skeptical, nervous, confused, agitated. Maybe the traffic was bad. Maybe they've felt cheated by a similar business in the past. Maybe they feel uneducated about the product you're providing and don't want to make the wrong choice. Maybe the price point is already at the end of their budget and they feel nervous about their ability to pay. If you remember those possibilities, what you deliver has the opportunity to replace that emotion. You could replace a bad emotion with a positive one. Imagine a customer visiting a quick-service restaurant. It's lunch hour in a busy urban environment, and the front counter is chaos. There's no queuing system, so people just pile into a clump and wait their turn. You can probably already guess what the guest is feeling, because we've all been in that situation. They're worried about 1. Accidentally cutting in front of someone who got there before them, and 2. Getting cut in front of. They're feeling rushed, and it takes longer than they were planning for their lunch hour. Now imagine the staff at the restaurant doing nothing to bring order to the chaos. They're just waiting at their registers for the next person to come up and place their order. They're leaving the environment for the guests to figure out. Everyone will still be able to place their order and get their food, but there's very little hospitality happening in that moment. The employees have failed to replace a negative emotion with a positive one. What if, instead, one of the employees took it upon themselves to keep track of who came in and when, and they directed the traffic? Automatically, it would bring a sense of relief to the guests. Then, to take it further, the employee could address each person who walked in, welcoming them and letting them know they're keeping track of the order of people. They might address the stress of the situation and thank people for their patience, even offering a free size upgrade to people's meals or making a joke that the kitchen staff will be adding extra love to their meals that day. That would be bringing hospitality into the mix. Then, if the employee wanted to replace the emotions the guests were experiencing, they'd take it a step further. They'd walk through the line in a relaxed manner, matching the pace of the guests, and take some drink orders. They'd give the customers waiting something to occupy themselves with, so they would at least feel like they're making progress in their meal. Though a small gesture, this would provide a great sense of hospitality. The original emotions were stress and worry. The replacement emotions were ease and delight. You can bet the guest would remember that feeling when they thought back on whether they wanted to visit the restaurant again. The role of hospitality is to protect how the guest feels and to give them the best possible experience. Becoming a broker. We're all familiar with the idea of a bodyguard. In fact, you've probably seen a dramatic scene in a movie where a gunshot rings out. The film slows down as the brave bodyguard hurls himself in front of the person he's protecting. His body inches in front of the bullet, which then makes impact. The film speeds up, chaos ensues, and you see the relief on the protected person's face. The bodyguard saved their life by taking the bullet. The brave protector considered the life of his client more important than his own. While it's not going to be quite so dramatic, that's essentially the role a team member should take for their guest. They are a shield, a bodyguard for the guest. They broker bad experiences so that the guest doesn't have them. When a team member sees themselves as a broker, the hotel guest doesn't have to feel lost when they can't find the elevator. The receptionist leaves their desk and walks them to the elevator. The restaurant guest doesn't have to feel embarrassed when their child spills a large beverage all over the table. The waiter gladly takes that emotion on themselves and cleans it up. The gym guest doesn't have to feel embarrassed that they don't know how to use a certain piece of equipment. An employee notices and walks over to give a quick lesson. Brokering the experience for the guest is about sheltering them from the negative emotion. It's jumping in front of the uncomfortable bullet and absorbing it so the guest doesn't have to experience it. Jason. Back in the day, I worked at a honey-baked ham near my house. I wasn't a manager, but I felt the responsibility for the experience people had when visiting the store. Now, at holiday times like Easter, Thanksgiving, and Christmas, the lines get pretty long. One particular day, the line was way out the door. I could sense people in the back asking, "How long will this take?" They were agitated because they had to deal with this long line on top of all the other stress they had at Christmas time. So I took it on myself to address those things. I would stand on the counter, with permission, and communicate with the customers. I even did giveaways. When people got to the counter, I'd say, "Because you've been waiting in line longer than 5 minutes, I would like to offer you something extra." Was it embarrassing to stand on the counter and yell out instructions to everyone? Of course. But I wanted to communicate to the people in line that I saw they were there and we were working to take care of them. Nobody told me to do that. Yet I also knew my manager trusted me to provide excellent hospitality in my role, so I felt empowered to do it. And even if I hadn't had the authority to give things away, I still have addressed people in the back of the line and let them know what steps we were taking to get them through the line as quickly as possible. Acknowledgement goes a long way toward hospitality. A guest could internally be asking, "How am I doing? Do you see me? Are you there for me?" What a powerful thing when we can broker the experience for our guests. When we acknowledge what they're feeling and work to protect them from negative emotions, we make a guest feel truly honored. In fact, you can even use words that address their feelings. It disarms a guest when you say something like, "I don't want you to feel lost. You got here at the perfect time." We never want to reinforce a guest's insecurities. Instead, we want to reinforce their security, their comfort, their confidence. Those emotions are memorable and will stick with the guest long after their visit is over. What a guest should feel. Each day, ask yourself 2 questions to get this idea of hospitality stirring in your head. 1. Today, how do you want your guests to feel? Then ask, in the moment, how can you encourage a guest to feel the way you've decided you want them to feel? 2. How do you want your team members to feel today? Understand that the way a team member feels directly affects how they will make the guest feel. You shouldn't expect your team members to take care of a guest if they don't feel cared for by the organization or the team. Put wind in the sails of your team, because that's what they're going to do for the guest. What do you want your guests to feel? What do you want them not to feel? Determine in your heart and with your team how you will get the guest to feel the good feelings and stay away from the bad feelings. For instance, If you're a mechanic at an auto shop, figure out what you want your customer to feel as they bring their car in. You would explain things well in terms that make sense to a non-
Sample complete. Ready to continue?